All right. Today is September 4th, 2025. My name is Mark R. LePage, founder of EntreArchitect and host today. Welcome to this first session of the EntreArchitect Small Firm Breakthrough Series, developed in collaboration with Jeremy Zick and the team over at WeCollabify. This one's called Profit Starts With You. Know what you're worth and price for it. Member video and audio is currently muted. This is a webinar, and the session will run for 60 minutes. It's approved by the American Institute of Architects for one learning unit of continuing education. You just need to be here to collect that. You just need to watch for 60 minutes. And an evaluation form will be emailed to you immediately following this session. So please complete the evaluation form. That will ask for your AIA information, and we will report your attendance to AIA. If you could do that before the end of the day tomorrow, that'd be great. Certificates of completion. If you would like a certificate of completion, please email us at admin@entrearchitect.com and you can request a certificate for your record, admin@entrearchitect.com. Training will run for 45 minutes or so, maybe a little bit more. We'll have a session at the end where you can ask questions. You're encouraged to post comments in the chat box and post your questions in Q&A. So a few weeks ago, we conducted a survey. Many of you probably completed our survey, and we asked one simple question. As a small firm architect, what do you need most right now? Do you remember that survey and your answer? Well, the responses were overwhelming with dozens of answers, very thoughtful answers that gave us a clear picture of what's keeping you guys up at night, the things that you're struggling with. The three challenges that rose to the top again and again: profitability, delegation, and business systems. And so these are the pain points that so many of us are navigating day in, day out. And they're not just frustrating, they're limiting our ability to grow and lead and thrive as small firm architects. So we built something to help. I reached out to our friend, Jeremy Zick, who's with us today. He's the CEO of WeCollabify, one of our allied partners here at EntreArchitect. And together, we created this new small firm breakthrough series. And it's a 3-part training designed to deliver real practical solutions to the most urgent issues in our business. Today's session is part of our ongoing allied partner collaboration that we have with WeCollabify, an innovative staffing and operations firm purpose-built for architects and engineers. They work with us. WeCollabify helps A&E firms build sustainable teams, streamline operations, make smarter decisions on how work gets done. Their deep understanding of how architects think and operate makes them the ideal partner for what we do at EntreArchitect. And they are part of our allied partner program, which is exclusive to only a few people, a few companies. We have 2 allied partners, and one of them is WeCollabify. And as part of that program, they create educational content like this webinar series. They have an opportunity to engage directly with members inside the EntreArchitect to help us thrive. And we have when companies become allied partners, they are in alignment with our long-term mission as EntreArchitect. And so the people that we team up with are aligned with what we're doing, and they do great work. And so WeCollabify is one of those. We're thrilled to welcome Jeremy Zick, founder and CEO of WeCollabify, as our presenter for this entire series. Jeremy brings a unique perspective as both a business strategist and a former CEO of an Austin-based architecture firm. So he's done it. He's been part of an architecture firm for years. And he has seen firsthand how tough it can be to run small businesses, small firms, and how transformational the right operational tools and leadership systems can be. So today begins with the #1 challenge that you told us that you needed help with: profitability. So in this session, Jeremy's going to walk us through a simple but powerful tool to help you calculate your billable value, better understand your time, and make clearer decisions about how and when to delegate work. So let's get started. Jeremy, welcome to this first session. Thanks for being here.
All right, Mark. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I've been a part of this community for about 2 years, and one thing I really like, Mark, about the community and some of the conferences that we've gone to is people are very active and communicative in trying to help each other be better, kind of in business. And for me, I really like that. I think it's really a fun community to be involved with, all around. And so I always appreciate it, and thank you very much. So I'm hopeful that this webinar we can add a lot of value to your guys' ecosystem today. Our whole goal with working with EntreArchitect is to add as much value as possible. I think that that's kind of the value of most people who are in this ecosystem, trying to help one another out and trying to give one another, let's say, some bits and pieces that help them do better in their business. So a little bit about WeCollabify and who I am. I'm just going to give a quick brief overview and then we're going to get right into it. But why am I here? Why am I in front of you today? Kind of what's some of my background. But the three things that sort of really define me, that have really defined my career is that one, I am an entrepreneur and a business leader. And I have started companies. So I've seen lots of the different phases of companies from the very beginning, from nothing to being one person. I've done the all-nighters both in studio. So I did also study architecture. So I did all the all-nighters in our studio environments that we all are so familiar with. And then also from the company perspective and like project delivery perspective. And then I've built them from kind of one person up to the largest one that I worked on was over 100. And so what that means is I've got lots of different perspectives of the many sort of different scales that a company can operate at. And so Mark and I really work to develop and hone this down to who we have in the EntreArchitect community so that it can be the most valuable to you guys. But yeah, so as an architect and having been in all of my businesses have been architecture adjacent. So I'm always in the business of architecture. And I have been through lots of the same struggles I've worked through. You know, maybe it took a long time on some things to actually get through some of the issues that we've overcome. And so my hope is that I can share some of those things. And anytime we can shorten somebody's learning curve along the way, I think that's the definition of adding value. So that's really why I started WeCollabify, and what we're here trying to do. We have a very specific strategy that I happen to be very excited about in general from a business operating perspective because of the impact that it can have. But all of the value add and all of the kind of knowledge of the business, we're also imbuing that into our ecosystem so that people can do better, do more, and kind of achieve more as a result. So for us, our preferred kind of interaction is if somebody interacts with us and they feel like they're better off for it over a short period of time, over a long period of time, that's what we're here for. So in terms of like titles, I've had lots of different titles, but my favorite one is really the leadership coach, business coach. I like puzzles and I like figuring out what's going on, and then I like creative solutions on resolving them. I think because of my architecture background, you have to always be creatively solving around a set of kind of problems. I've focused that kind of in the business realm and have really focused into the business kind of arena more than the architecture arena for the last 15 years or so. And so I enjoy that. And it's really fun for me when I'm talking to different people about the different things they're experiencing. I enjoy the puzzle of trying to come up with a good sort of solution. Um, so as part of what Mark was saying, there are things that this audience is really asking for per the survey that was put out. And so we're going to kind of work through that. And whether you're working with me with WeCollabify or not, we'll have a strategy session and everything else after this. So the goal here is to try and provide some value to everybody in this community. So to start, and Mark, I'm going to see if you can help me on this. What size is your firm? I want to understand who I'm talking to. And when I say size, I'm just talking about the number of people that you're working with. I know this community, we have a lot of solopreneurs, and a lot of the clients that I'm working with are solopreneurs within EntreArchitect. So I'm just trying to get a sense of the size of these firms. So Mark, do you mind reading to me a few of these from the chat.
Yeah, 2.5, 4, 9, 3, solo, 1, 1, 2.5, 1, 4, 1, 2, 5.
Okay, perfect. Very good. Thank you. That just helps me. So it sounds like we have a lot of solopreneurs. I'm going to say 60% based on the quick little thing we just did, 65 maybe. A few in the 2 to 4 range, and then a couple at that larger one. So this
Yeah.
presentation has really been built around solopreneurs and then the small firm architects. So I'll be doing messaging for both to make sure that everybody's getting as much out of this as possible. And then some of the calculators we built were very specifically for this sort of range, which is I'm going to say that you're kind of between, let's say an Excel spreadsheet and a much more advanced project management system. And that's an uncomfortable in between where there's not a lot of infrastructure to help. So we're trying to provide a little bit of infrastructure that helps kind of between there. Going back to the survey, Mark kind of did the recap on this, but this one we're going to really focus on the profitability. This pie chart that you're looking at shows what people were asking for by percentage. So we picked the 3 largest percentages and decided to develop this series around that. So for solopreneurs, we're going to be working on helping you get an understanding of the costs of taking whatever the next step might look like for you. And it's more about getting comfortable with it. Whether or not you're ready to do it, if you can understand it, then that's the first step, and that's going to help. For those larger firms, we're going to be talking about kind of a super fast profitability calculator. What I've had in terms of experiences, even when you're on BQE Core, Monograph, or you're in deep into those systems, the amount of data entry has to be so kind of exhaustive that often I find it's not up to date, and therefore I can't take great conclusions out of it. So it kind of defeats its own purpose if it's not really well managed. And so sometimes a quick snapshot profitability calculator can be very helpful in those circumstances. So this community, one thing I've talked to a lot of people about, this happened at Nashville, and then a lot of the people that I've done phone calls with, you guys hear a lot about let's work on the business, not just in the business. And I've definitely heard that and talked to a lot of people who are interested in that. So for me, we're going to try and help get tangible steps towards working in the business, or not getting yourself out of working in the business and onto on the business. And when you zoom out to the 20,000 kind of foot view, the first thing you have to do is value your time. Remove yourself from the time consuming tasks of the day to day. And so we're going to talk about a lot about the time today and how you can kind of do that and how you can quantify it, understand it, and then kind of be deliberate about how you're doing this. So that's going to be kind of a big focus for today. We ultimately want to check profitability on these kind of seminar and with the calculators we're doing. And in order to do that, the reason we're checking profitability is it helps you understand where time can be saved and how time can be allocated and where time should be allocated to be able to improve your system. So in order for us to understand that profitability, we have to understand the dollar value of your time. And this is a little bit tricky. Sometimes it ends up being like, oh, what do I charge? I don't know. And that's a hard one to solve, especially in a webinar. So what we'll do is we'll get context for you that helps you get 70% of the way there in terms of understanding what the market rate is for things. And all of that comes down to understanding your cost or a market cost to do what you're doing. So if let's just say you're doing residential projects and you're interested in taking on a multifamily project and you're not sure how to cost it all out. For me, one of the first steps is understand what's the market cost to do this. What are other firms going to be paying their talent to do this? And what are the hours it's going to take them to do these projects? And so we're going to start to get a little bit laser focused on the people cost, because in architecture, that's usually 70% or more of the total cost of the firm. So if we can understand that, we can understand a lot about it. And that's gonna really help provide context for what you're doing. So one thing that I have done is I did a turnaround project where we kind of took an architecture firm that was languishing, and we turned them around. They had a really great kind of history, but they couldn't quite grow. They couldn't get kind of going or up to scale, and they really wanted to. So when I come in, the first thing I do is I think about the pricing. So with this company, I did that. With other companies where I'm analyzing their numbers, I'm doing that too. For me, the pricing is like the blood pressure. It's a quick reading and it's going to give me a lot of interesting information. So there's two major issues that I see with pricing when I'm looking at firms and digging into their numbers. The first one is usually their pricing is like pretty good for 5 years ago. It's hard to kind of go in and up your pricing every single year. It's a little bit like it makes you nervous if your clients aren't going to be willing to pay, or if they are, and it usually causes people to freeze. And so usually when I look at that, their pricing is about 5 years kind of old, and it needs to be raised. And the issue is that inflation is basically making it so that they're making less and less every year. And that's just a business kind of realm. That's an environment. And I have found that it's not fun when you're raising prices, but if you create a system and you're doing it every year, it helps you sort of avoid that. The other big question I have is like when I look is what are you paying your staff? Are you overpaying or are you underpaying from market rate? Most of them are underpaying. Most of them maybe they aren't doing kind of benefits or various different things like that. But it's important for me to know because that is going to tell me how much turnover I can anticipate them having. Because somebody who's a great friend and they might do something at a pretty low price, it's a great scenario for today and it works for today. But from a longer term perspective, it makes it very hard for that person to stick around. And when they're not sticking around, it means you're burning time. So back to that sort of time component. But we want to give some context. So we built this, I called it a contextualizer as opposed to a calculator. And this is basically going to just give you the cost rate of your, and we're going to use the first and only architecture standard KPI, which is your fully burdened labor rate. And what I like about this fully burdened labor rate is it will give you an hourly figure of what your actual cost is to have somebody on your team. And if it's a 1099, it's going to be one thing. If it's a salaried person, it's going to have benefits and it's going to have bonuses. It's going to have vacation time. It's going to have all sorts of additional things. And for me, that's super important as an indicator of kind of what the actual market rate cost is to do something. And then for you solopreneurs, it's really important to kind of get this number because when we go into the profitability calculator and we start looking at that, we are going to have to put in the cost to do the work that you're doing. And it's always kind of a confusion point to go between what's my cost versus should this be my billing rate versus, well, this is what I would actually accept in terms of earnings because I just need this project. So there's a lot of little variables, many variables that make that a little bit hard. So I'm sharing this calculator that we developed and it's very basic, it's very simple, and its entire purpose is to show you what your fully burdened labor rate is, which is this column right here. And again, that's getting you to understand what's your actual true cost for a thing. And so we've got it broken up by emerging architectural staff level 1, level 2, and level 3. Those are fairly standard AIA. We use those a lot in WeCollabify. We really did a lot of development and leaned into those roles because it's really important to understand the different level of experience and skill that somebody's going to be able to bring to the table for your project so that you can adequately kind of fund and allocate time for that project. But this calculator essentially is saying, hey, if somebody in a emerging level is $69,000 a year, usually people will go in and they'll start costing based on that. But we're saying, look, okay, at 28.4% in terms of benefits, that's going to be 88,000 a year, almost 90,000. And that's ultimately at the fully burdened labor rate, that's $45 an hour of cost to the firm. And again, because we're going to be talking about profitability, we want you to be able to predict and project potential costs of potential future people that may help you, or existing people who may help you to evaluate kind of where you are. And I'm going to show you how we came up with this 28.4, and I'm actually going to reset it because it's 29.5. But if you go into the settings here, and we're going to share this link, so you guys will get access to this and you're going to get to use this. And our hope is it's an ongoing tool that you just kind of use when you feel like you need it. But this basically says, okay, on the benefits, it's at 29.5. What does that mean? Health insurance is 7%. So Social Security, Medicare, state unemployment insurance. So you guys can look at this, and some of you may, maybe you have an arrangement and you're not paying health insurance. So you'll want to drop this number, drop it down to a number that is more adequate or aligned to what you're specifically doing in terms of these added benefits. But this gives you a good idea. And then the annual hours, I like to run them at 1960. If you basically take 52 weeks in a year, you multiply that times 40-hour weeks, that gives you like 2080. And then I like to back out approximately 3 weeks for vacation, sick time, other things. And so this basically means that when you go back, and I'm going to hide these settings, when I'm looking at these numbers, I've already backed out the time that they are not going to be at their desk. And so I know that this is the time that they are sitting at their desk doing productive work. And when I break it down into an hourly, now I have a very strong cost leg that I can stand on to sort of understand that. So we've thrown here, just to get as a reference, this is the WeCollabify cost per hour for those same roles. And that gives you a little bit of context. 1099s, if you guys have 1099s, they're going to be different because they aren't going to have these benefits percentages. Those can be taken much more at face value. But this gives you really good context. And a lot of people that I've talked to, they don't have crystal clear the difference between a 1099 worker in terms of their cost, a salaried worker in terms of their cost, and a nearshore help worker in terms of their cost. So that's why we're building this and made this calendar. But I want you to kind of remember this number. When you say, if you're the owner, if you say, hey, look, to replace me, and I'm just going to pick a number random, let's just leave it where it was. If you say, in my market, to replace me at my skill level, it's going to cost me $180,000 a year to do that. Couple things you can do. You can go to Perplexity and you can ask, or ChatGPT or anything else, and you get somewhat close. They're going to give you a ballpark. And then you can also go to the community here, EntreArchitect, and ask people. But if you're in, Midwest, Denver or one of these towns, these numbers I think are going to be fairly lined up. If you're in California, if you're in New York, the costs are going to be higher than this. And if you're in kind of the Midwest, some of these smaller kind of town areas, these numbers are going to be less. So the reason this calculator is adjustable is because in your market, in your region, you can go in and you can start making changes to this, and then it will update, and then you can remember your costs. But if we put this at, let's just say 200,000, let's say we're excited and interested, and we think we are going to do this at 200,000. We're going to cost ourselves out at 200,000. That's basically an owner cost rate at $130 an hour. Solarpreneurs, this is important for you guys because you can put whatever number you want in here that's going to be kind of aligned to market rate for your capability set. And then we're going to use that number when we're calculating profitability. And that's just going to help us like get everything much cleaner and much more organized in terms of how we're sort of approaching some of these things. So give me one sec while I look for the correct screen to reshare, because I'm going to go back into the presentation at this point. So we talked about that. We got a little bit of context. And now I'm going to go into sort of this power of ideas versus the reality of execution. And this is the architect's unavoidable truth, I would say. A lot of architects have a lot of ideas. And stick with me on this because this is kind of like a thought experiment that then leads to what I think is a pretty impactful sort of takeaway that you guys can have. But architects do have a lot of ideas. You guys are in the business of taking ideas, putting them on paper, and then getting them so well documented that other people can take that plan and execute and build those ideas. So it's also often that people in the architecture world or any business world have a ton of ideas on how to run their business better. And it makes sense that the execution of those ideas just happens to take like 1,000 times longer than it takes you to have those ideas. So if you're like me, you're sitting on a whole bunch of ideas that you haven't executed yet. And if you're also like me, you plan on executing them at some point. And so along the way, I was kind of doing the math and I was saying, wow, if I really want to do all these things and if I want to execute them all, because that's always how I had envisioned it, I'm going to like do them all and get them done myself. I was doing the math and I'm like, there's not time in this life for me to do that. That's just never going to happen. And it's hard for me to like unmarry myself to some of the ideas that I like to have or think that I want to do. And so there's just this huge bottleneck in the execution side. And so when I started coming to terms with, hey, I do want to execute these ideas. I'm not willing to just give up on these ideas. The math, in order to make it work, the only variable is the execution time. And I can't be the one to execute them all. I can still execute all the ideas I have. I don't want that to shift. So I'm trying to solve for, I get to execute every idea that I would like. And when I do that, the only thing I can do is add help and add support in terms of that execution to be able to execute all these ideas that I'm really interested in pursuing. And so I just know, because I talk to a lot of you, that this is the case. There's 1,000 things you would love to do on your business and business development and this and that and the other thing. But I want to make super crystal clear that if you are also going to be the executor of everything, then you will not get to all that. You just simply will not. There isn't time. It just doesn't work. You can't get time. You can't get additional time back that you would like. You're either gonna kind of just exhaust yourself, or you're gonna kind of come to terms and say, okay, I'm either gonna cull down the ideas that I have and let go and just say these will never get executed, or you can start working on getting support and freeing up your time. So the whole premise and a lot of what we're going to talk about with the profitability staffing calculator is what amount of time you're actually able to reclaim for yourself in order to reapply that time to be able to execute more. So a core kind of topic that I just can't stress enough is think about the opportunity cost of your time. If you are, and I'm going to write down to the solopreneurs, if you are executing a project, that is a super time intensive activity. And it just is. It requires a lot of work, and there's a ton of detailing. There's a ton of kind of design process that needs to go into this whole thing. And so if you're going to be doing all of it, and it is kind of in the architect's nature to need to control that, and that makes sense because that is their job, which is to control what's going on paper so that people can understand it, read it, and build it. But the opportunity cost that you have by doing all of your time into that execution is anything else you might have wanted to do, or any other idea that you might have wanted to pursue, or that you could have pursued if you had more time to have been able to pursue that. So the whole kind of balancing act is trying to get some time back, get a little bit of support where you need it, keep things on quality, keep things on trajectory. And so the more you can kind of start aggressively reclaiming time or conceptualizing your time, valuing your time, the better off your future can be, because you can perpetuate yourself at your current status just doing a lot of execution. And that tends to be what a lot of architects end up doing, not because they want to, but because that's just the way it goes for them. And so if you're getting pretty specific about your time, then you can really start to form a new sort of trajectory. And for me, in the way I think about this, and I think several people might be the same, is for me, I look at time as an ability to execute more ideas, because I've got so many that are just sitting there waiting to be worked on. And the architects are undervaluing their time in general, and they're doing it so that they can control outcomes. Again, I feel like there's this kind of dichotomy where architects have to be that way to be successful at what they're doing. So they have to be very more conscious than other businesses, I think, to extract themselves and then work towards freeing up their time. I just think that that's a kind of relationship that we have to play with in the architecture world or so world. Um, so another thing that I want to talk about is if you're a firm owner, so we've talked about a little bit the execution and how you can get blinders on and really get into execution. But if you own your own company, if you're a solopreneur or if you're owning another company that has a couple of staff members, your staff members also are thinking a lot along these lines. And so as an owner, it's really up to you to think long-term, big picture. A lot of the project day to day, and I was talking to a client just a couple days ago, but the project day-to-day deadline cadence is such that almost always you're going to have to abandon future long-term things that are better for the long-term positioning of your company so that you can get the work done to hit this deadline. And then the architects do live in this world where there's deadline and then deadline and then deadline. And therefore, they just never have time to sort of pull themselves or extract themselves out and look at the big picture of things. And so I just want to stress that if you're a firm owner or if you're a solopreneur, try and make a real conscious effort to sort of extract yourself. It's up to you to think big picture. It's up for you to think long term. And every project decision is always a short-term decision to be made for that project. And usually it's going to cost maybe a process. So maybe you would love to have elaborated your details library while you're doing this specific project, but deadline came. Guess what? I'm not going to have time to also bring along the details library. That gets thrown out the window. Client deadline gets met, but the firm didn't progress. It hasn't grown. It hasn't developed, or future projects haven't gotten more efficient. So that's a thing that is really important to bring that headspace to clients or to projects. And then to also know when you have a project management or manager, and sometimes there's this like director, like we had at this company, we had a really awesome right-hand man that he could get projects done. He worked really hard and he was totally reliable. So that's kind of a dream in some respects. And a lot of people strive to have somebody like that. We actually evolved him into the director of operations. But the issue that we had is he always pushed short-sighted staffing decisions. He always wanted to do things the best that he could. He wanted to control them and do everything that he could possibly do. And that was a real problem because over the course of 2 years, his division ended up kind of shrinking and not growing, while others who were less kind of in that sort of control mode, they were able to grow a lot more because what happened is they could take on more volume as they had a more dynamic team structure. And instead of this kind of whole concept of I can do this faster myself and I'm going to do this faster myself, the other managers were I'm going to work with my team to do this. And yes, it's a little bit tricky when you're first developing towards a project deadline and you have people that you're working with. But over time, it's such a better system because one of them has opportunity for growth, the other one does not. So keep that in check. And I know that a lot of people think like that, and I am curious just if you want to throw in the chat, but I do this myself. But if you think you can do it better and faster yourself, throw a me in the chat because this is something that I come across all the time in architecture. And guess what? It is totally true. You can almost always do it better and faster yourself. If you're an advanced architect, that's just the way it is. So one of the calculators that we're going to talk about is going to show a little bit about the relationship of, yeah, it takes longer with help actually from a project perspective. And we want to kind of bring that out and get it clear. And so when we bring this back to this like long-term thinking, I just want to talk about, I'm in the mastermind with EntreArchitect as well. So in our group, we have somebody, and I just want to highlight an example of where I think they're being very long-sighted, and I think it's really positive and healthy for their future. And they're basically in a scenario where They aren't growing, haven't been growing, have been waiting for work but not getting it. So that's, a concern point. And then they just got a bunch of proposals. That's not contracts signed. That's not like deals ready to go. But he reached out and he's like, "Hey, Jeremy, I think I would like to work with you to get somebody going." And to me, I was like, this is a really, really smart move because he's protecting his future. And he's saying, look, if I get someone going now and these proposals land, then I'm not going to get dragged into the execution, which is what often happens, where you kind of get dragged into that execution once you land a bunch of projects. Now it's like, oh, how's that going to happen? So that's just an example of where I see a really smart long-term thinker and how it's going to save his future time from getting dragged into the production. So we are going to talk about the very basic profitability right now. So we talked a lot about time. We talked a lot about saving your time, protecting your time, and the fact that if you want to execute more, you're going to need to start freeing up time from that production. So that's going to lead us right into this profitability calculator. So we're going to go into this, but what this calculator is designed for is we want you to have as few inputs as possible. So I want you to be able to fill this out in less than 2 minutes. And the goal is it's an ongoing tool that you can just use and quickly understand a project profitability. So this is a project by project profitability calculator. We're not calculating the profitability of your firm. One of the big bog downs in understanding project profitability is a lot of people tend to try and layer all the projects that they're working on together and get a total profitability outcome. And once you start adding everything in, it gets complex quickly. And again, back to time, it suddenly becomes a wildly time-consuming task. And if you're doing it yourself, you don't have time for it, so you don't do it. If you're asking your team members to do it, they don't have time for it, so they usually don't do it or aren't very diligent about the kind of data entry that's required to make it happen. So we're taking, and with this, we're making a lot of broad assumptions. So I want you to think about this as really as like a guidepost. This is not a perfectly dialed in every different variable has been taken into consideration on every project. This is a guidepost, and the way that I think you guys can use this tool and get the most value out of this tool is if you're auditing projects that you've already done, then you can get a quick idea of was that project profitable or not. And then if you're thinking about taking on a project and you're setting your fees or you're trying to understand your own cost or what your take home might be if you're a solopreneur and you want to understand, well, what's my actual take home on this project? This is a tool that can absolutely help you on that. And it's project by project. So it's really helpful to go and do this on that project by project basis. Again, it just sort of strips out a whole bunch of complexity that tends to lead towards not having a super clear kind of insight on things. So what I'm going to do is walk you guys through this calculator really quickly. And then again, we are going to make this calculator available to you all so that you can use it after the webinar. And it's our hope that this is an ongoing tool that you guys are able to use consistently. So I'm going to walk you through the inputs. Basically, it's an Excel sheet right now, and what we're going to be doing is we're developing just like the previous calculator you saw, so it will be hosted on the website. So it will just be buttons that you're pressing on the website, but for now, it's going to be available in this spreadsheet form. So at the input side, the income of the project, so the total income of the project. If it's an hourly project, just calculate out what you think that income is going to be. If it's a fixed fee, throw that in there. If it's an hourly with a cap, make sure you don't put anything over the cap. But what we're hoping is you just do a napkin kind of calculation. What's the income? And you slap it in here. Then we want the total project hours that you or your top team member intends to spend on this project. And then if you have staff, and again, this is really geared towards solopreneurs or smaller companies. Smaller companies generally are going to only have one, maybe two people working on a project at the same time. Solopreneurs are only going to have one person, so you would only fill that out. But if you fill out the total hours you anticipate taking on this project, then it will calculate it to the right, which I'll show you in a minute. And then if you have some staff, just put their names in. I threw these as placeholders, Johnny, Erica, Andrea. Just throw them in and the number of hours you think they're going to be on the project. Here, what we want is you as the solopreneur or as the business owner, how many hours a week do you typically work? And be honest and think of it as an average. I know it might spike and then kind of go down and then spike and go down. Think of it as an average. This helps us prorate the expenses to the individual projects. And that's the calculation that we're doing that is making us able to look at profitability on a project by project basis, because we're effectively saying most firms are going to have many projects going simultaneously, or maybe they have one project that's going to take like 8 months or something. But this all works if if you put in the actual amount of time that you spend on a monthly basis here. Then from an expense perspective, think of all your overhead expenses that are not related to paying yourself or paying any team members. So anything like salaries or your own personal salaries or benefits or vacation time or any of the like insurances and all that, remove all that. All I want to see here is software subscriptions, or most people aren't going to have office overhead on this call, but some of them are. And if you do, throw that in there. But it's good to always know your general average monthly expenses. And again, average them out. These expenses cycle up and down. Maybe the subscription's annual, maybe there's something else, but throw that in there. And that's going to, again, what we're doing here is we're going to prorate all that to the specific project basis. And then enter from the previous calculator your fully kind of burdened labor rate, and then any of the team members at the salary rate you mentioned, put their fully burdened labor rate. And that's going to give you labor expenses plus non-labor expenses. Just as an aside, there's lots of industry standard kind of KPIs for architecture, and there's lots of methodologies. I've used them all. They're very good. If you're doing them and it's working for you, absolutely don't abandon it. What this is doing is a very quick calculation. And so we're not using all those industry standards. We're just saying, hey, what's this project going to look like? And you can update these, and then this is going to change, and you're going to quickly see what's the profitability. And that's the goal. So from a net profit, this is what you're really looking at. And once you know, okay, here's my income, here's my expenses. This is just a very basic profit and loss sheet. What's my gross profit, and then what's my net profit? And then if you're a solopreneur, you're basically saying, hey, my cost for myself is this, and so your total take home is the amount that you paid yourself plus the amount of net profit, and that's what your ultimate total take home is. And this tells you, is this project healthy or not? If you're getting negative numbers, it forces you to ask the question why, and then you dig deeper and you figure it out. A couple benchmarking things. At the gross profit level, you really are shooting for a 20 to 30% of margin here. And I'll actually add that in down here so you guys see it. And then on the net profit, you're focusing on 8 to 20%. A lot of people tell me that their firm is 20% profitable. When I dig into the numbers, usually it's less than 5. So just know that and understand that there are some benchmarks that you're kind of aiming for. For people who work with us over time, we try and push the gross profitability towards 50% and then the net profitability towards 30%. So that's generally how that works. So I'm going to show you a couple examples. Everybody knows kind of, okay, yeah, it should be profitable, but I'm going to show you some sort of use cases on where this helps you make informed decisions and how that affects kind of the future of your business. So we're going to go to this chart here. I'm going to show you, this is a P&L of a chart I was doing due diligence on. And early on, you can't see the numbers. That's somewhat intentional because they're not that important. What we're looking at is trends. But this was 2016, 17, 18, 19. So here they're making a little bit of money. Okay, good. They've got positive, they've got net profit. Here they're losing a little bit of money. Here's they're losing a little bit more. Here they made a little, then they lost a lot. And so this is a pretty ho-hum, pretty unexciting. This is a very poor performance overall. So you can't really tell though, like, what do I do about this? So I'm coming in, I'm thinking, okay, where are the problems? How can I fix them? And what can I do about it? So I'm going to just show you that when you do that profitability exercise that I just showed you by project type, we took all of their projects and they were doing residential, they were doing multifamily, they were doing commercial, right? So I did that same profitability analysis that I just showed you. I did it retroactively for the last, 4 or 5 years on all of their projects. And immediately I saw where the problems were in the firm. So these three projects lost a ton of money, so much money. And then these gained like a tiny, tiny bit of money. And then these were basically a wash. So for me, it was immediately clear exactly what the problem was. And I went and dug down, and now I had the direction and a solve. In this case, they were both underpriced, and their process was just a total disaster in terms of the project type that they were working on. So they could not keep anything on budget in these kind of large projects. And for me and for you as a decision maker, that's where you go in and you make a smart decision, and you can take the future and eliminate this mess and make sure that it's not there. And you can do that by fixing the right problem, or eliminating that project type, or renegotiating certain contracts, which is what we ended up doing in this case. We did all three because this one needed all three. But it's just kind of an example of how I like to use that project type profitability calculator. And so once you do one project, two project, three project, and you start looking at the trend by project type, it gives you really interesting information. We did another, I do these mentorship programs, and I'm doing one with another architect. She's a solopreneur and she's just starting her business. And we basically use that same thing. She has very short cycle projects. They might be 1 week or so. And we took them and we put them into the profitability chart. And immediately it was clear that she was way under charging on those projects. And so, again, because we're looking at the market rate costs of what it costs in the general market, it was very helpful for us to see that. And so what we did with her is we actually put a plan in place, and we got some help for her because, the whole thing about time that I talked about earlier, what we ended up doing is getting some support. We took all of the tasks that were easily repeatable that she shouldn't be involved with, and we started getting somebody to help her with those. And then she gained 10 hours back sort of on every single project, and there were multiple projects. And then she chose to use that time to do some more networking, more business development. And it's resulted for her in a higher project volume. And now she's really growing, and she's growing in a way that she wants. So she doesn't want to be a massive, massive company. She just wants to have a little bit more of stability with her future. And so that's what we're working on with her. But that's, again, it's how that profitability can be impactful and effective. So my recommendation, I would start every project with intention. So do the profitability exercise and then elaborate the project. And then I would predict future financial performance of those projects. So I would do it twice on every single project, if not more along there. And so just try and design your success like you design your projects. And then what we're going to talk about here is we've talked about how to value your own time, but we're missing about the team. So we haven't talked about team and how that team can help you along the way. So we built this other calculator. So we have three mini calculators. They're like micro calculators. Again, each one takes less than 2 minutes for you to kind of use. And so the hope is that you can use them frequently as needed to make smart decisions. So this one's specifically designed to show you the financial and time savings impact of getting some support or help. And if you're like trying to figure out if this is a good thing for you or not, this might show you that no, this is not a good thing for you to do right now. And it might show you that it is, but it just gives you a little bit of information, which I think is really important. If you're moving forward instead of with fear, you're moving forward with intention and in the know, that puts you in a much more empowered kind of arena. So I do have an EntreArchitect client, and He doesn't have any time. He can't even check his profitability on his projects. He generally knows that, things are going well, but he can't check that profitability on those projects because he doesn't have the time to do it. So our hope is that this can help him. And the other thing is that he doesn't know how to fully make staffing decisions because what's the cost implication of that going to be? How's that going to affect me? It's unknown and it's hard to kind of assess. So I'm going to show you guys this calculator real fast. And again, it will be available to you. So this has the same inputs that you guys had before. So I'm not going to go over the inputs. These inputs are pre-entered, but as you change them, this whole balance or the P&L will change. And again, we're looking at P&L by project. Here we've got the benchmarking, so you know what your benchmarking is. And in this case, what we're doing is all of the information is going into this first column. And then all of these other ones are different staff levels helping you. So if you're going to do this work yourself, you're going to put the hours in as if you're doing everything yourself, 100% yourself. And what that's going to show you, and especially for the solar entrepreneurs, it gets you a really good idea on what your take home is going to be. You're working by yourself. You don't have team members. A lot of you, this is the way you're going to be working today. And then I've got this part down below where it says time freed or hours freed during your kind of project. And the answer to that is no. I've put 90 hours as the time it takes to do this project. So all of those 90 hours, which are shown here, are going straight into the project in execution. So you're not getting any time because you're spending all of your time on execution. Now, what would this look like at the numbers level? And I'm just interested at the financial impact of, okay, what if I took on an emerging architect professional? And if we took that on, how's that going to impact and affect me? So these are all derived. And generally what I have is, okay, now they're going to spend 90 hours on the project. And guess what? You're going to spend 36. So that's odd. Like, that's an unusual thing. Suddenly the project is taking longer than it would have taken if you did it yourself. So if you look at the total project hours, you're doing it at 90 hours. You just added a team member and now it's taking way longer to do. Of course, it's unusual, but it totally makes sense. These people are less experienced than you. They take longer. There's more back and forth. Your time gets burned, kind of bringing them along, redlining, showing them things, showing them how things work, correcting work that they're doing, and then sitting down and just doing the stuff that they don't have the capability to do. So it absolutely makes sense that you're spending more time in terms of total project hours as you incorporate and add team members. So I do want, like, one of the big takeaways is I want you guys to become comfortable with that dynamic, that whatever you're doing today, it's going to take you more time as you get help. And, down the road, if you have a partner who just totally can do things and you don't have to do anything, that's a different scenario and circumstance. But by and large, as you get more experience, so just so you see, we've got emerging, we've got a level 1, level 2, and then we've got a level 3 here. As you get more experienced, the project takes less time. That just makes sense. The least experienced person is now 126 hours, and and 36 of those hours is yours. But as you go up, that project drops and you get down to 99. You're still over it because you're involved. You're still helping. You're still with the license doing the quality assurance, quality control on it. So it's still taking you a little bit longer. In terms of billing rates, and I'm not getting into that, we're only looking at costs on this, but just so you know, the billing rates for the younger people are a lot lower than the billing rates for the higher people. And that's where you start to make up some of the difference here. But from a cost rate perspective, and as we look at our P&L, it actually starts making the numbers look interesting. So if we take what you could have made at 14,000 on this project as a solarpreneur, this is your take home, which is effectively your time that you put on the project plus any of the profits after expenses. So that ends up being 14,000 that you've made on this project. What's your take home with an emerging? It's going down. And this is a big thing. And it's important to know those solarpreneurs are like, if I take on team members, now I have less billable hours. Now I have less income. And sometimes you cannot handle that. It depends on where you are, but it's an important thing that I know you guys are facing. So here we're saying, okay, look, yes, your income just went from 14,400 down to 12,000. And as you pay for more expensive staff, it's actually going down, and that makes sense. And this is what most people are seeing and thinking. And that makes them very nervous. But I want to bring your focus to the kind of the hours freed during the project. So if you take on the emerging, you've just freed 54 of your hours on this scenario. If you're taking on a level one, you've freed 63 hours. So as that talent is more and more experienced, you're freeing more and more of your time. And then the big question, and that this brings us back to the opportunity cost that I talked about earlier in terms of what you could be doing with that time is if you just freed 81 hours and you got this much net profit, this much take home, and you have 81 hours back, what are you going to do with those 81 hours? You can do another billable project. So this calculation says, hey, if I have two projects and they're lined up and they're ready to go, and I can just roll that 81 hours into another project, well, now I can earn this amount in addition to what I earned here. And so my actual take home, my actual total potential earning, if I'm rolling that into new projects, is 20,000. And I want to show you this as it relates to your original do it all, like your all execution, you're going to do everything. Your take home on this one's 14,000. If you're hiring and emerging, your take home's 18,000 potentially with the freed up time allocated and spent on another project. And as you go up in the talent level, your total potential earning actually increases. And why? It's because you're saving time and you're investing in it into other things. And some people don't always have billable projects lined up to be able to reinvest that time directly into billable other projects. So what you can do is, and this is what one of our kind of my mentors is doing, is she's taking that time working on business development, and that's keeping a nice project flow, which is ultimately helping her with stability. It's removing that whiplash that you get when you're just the only person executing, because you finish, you probably don't have a job lined up. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. So you kind of stop. And that whiplash happens with small firms too, where they are all ramped up and then they have to stop. So, or they're all staffed up and then they have to let people go, is what I meant. So I clearly have spent more time than I had anticipated. And we're going to go quickly back to the presentation and then just kind of run towards the end here to try and make sure we get done on time. But if you're thinking, hey, this is interesting. I don't know if I can do this or not. That's why we're here. That's what we solve. That's kind of what we generally focus on, and we try and help you guys out. So if you're protecting your profitability, then you're really reclaiming control. So what I want you to do is take control of your value. I want you to really be able to kind of understand these and have them work for you. And so what we're going to do is I'm doing these strategy sessions where you guys can work with me and we can work on your business a little bit. I'm doing those for 1 hour, and it's only for the EntreArchitect kind of community here. So feel free. Andrew is going to throw in the chat a link where you can connect to me. And then what we can do, and I know we're running out of time, we will do some questions and answers, but I know I've consumed most of that time accidentally. So feel free to jump into the link that Andrew's sending in the chat and schedule a meeting with me. And my hope is we can talk about your business. I will ask you the questions. We can look at some of these as it pertains to your business, and then just kind of help you guys be more informed and making informed decisions along the way. And again, we're going to send you all an email with access to the tools that I just showed you so that you can use them for your own. So that's it. Our next webinar that we're going to do is we're really going to talk about leadership. And if you are taking on staff or interested in, we're going to talk about how to reclaim your time through delegation, because delegation is also an art form and there's a lot to be learning there. So thank you guys. And I am open for questions. I personally can stay. I know a lot of you are going to have to jump off, but just fire any questions that you have and we can do that.
If you have any questions, post them in the Q&A window. Right now, Melissa asks, Would the hours/week of the PM in the profitability calculator be project time or total time?
The hour/week in the which profitability calculator?
In the profitability calculator, for hours,
Yep.
the hours slash week for the PM.
Okay,
I guess
yes.
project manager, I'm assuming.
That's total. So what that one is the absolute total time it's going to take to do that project. Either if it's you yourself, or and the reason it's slash PM is if you have a larger company but you have one PM who's in charge of that whole project, how long would it take them to do it? Because what we're trying to do in that calculator is compare what that all looks like. And then if you have additional staff members who are going to be working on that project, you just put the amount of time that each staff member is going to be working on the project into the calculator, and it will automatically calculate the cost. And then, Melissa, if I didn't do a good job, throw me a calendar link and I'll try and help you through it.
Yeah, click the link. I highly recommend you all to click the link and schedule time with Jeremy. I mean, this is an hour of his time. So, and it's not an hour sales pitch. This is an hour of him trying to help you solve your problems. And so, click the link and schedule some time with Jeremy. This is part of our partnership with the Allied Partnership. So click the link and sign up for him. Bryn asks, the salaries for the first calculator, are those based on small firm data? Many look high for small firms in region, according to the most recent AIA small firm report.
So that's based on the data from the firm that I worked at that was in Austin, Texas. And Austin, Texas was an environment at the time I was working that was growing very fast. So all that data is from specific experience that I had when I was working there and what we were actually paying our team members in that specific city. So again, wherever your city is, it's gonna change.
Yeah, adjust as necessary. Last question, Peter says, do you update monthly based on actual time spent versus planned time spent?
I'm update monthly based on actual time spent versus planned. What I like to do is come at this at a snapshot, and I think I understand this question, so hopefully this is helpful. But if you're looking at a future project, you're going planned time spent only, and then you're going to do that whole thing. If you're looking backwards at a project that's been done, you're doing actual, but you're not blending both in this specific calculator. So you're either going to be looking forward or you're looking backwards.
All right. We're going to wrap things up with that. Jeremy and his team are available in the WeCollabify channel at EntreArchitect Network. So any additional questions, go to the channel and post there. You'll get questions answered by either Jeremy or his team. Don't hesitate to do that. If you're not a member, you can join now, EntreArchitect Network, for free. Go to EntreArchitect.com, sign up, and you will have access for free to that channel and much, much more. Thank you all for attending today. Let's see here. I just mentioned what I was going to say at the end here, so I don't need to re-say it. The channel is there for you. We will link the calendar link, and when the calculators are ready to go, and they're all final and set and ready to go, WeCollabify will send you that information by email, but we'll also post a link to those calculators in the network. And so we'll get them to you however we can get them to you. Thank you all for joining us today. Our next breakthrough webinar, as Jeremy mentioned, October 9th, it will be focused on delegation. So the second thing that everybody was talking about, first thing was profitability. The second thing was delegation. We're going to focus on delegation October 9th. The registration that you signed up for this webinar included an email to register for all 3 webinars. And so go back to that email and click the link to register for the other 2 webinars. If you don't have that email, you can just re-register at entrearchitect.com/breakthrough, and that will go back to the registration page. You just register again and be registered for those 2 other sessions. Jeremy, thank you for your dedication to our community. Obviously put a lot of work into this. These calculators were built for us, guys, And so I really appreciate you putting the effort into creating this series and the calculators that you're putting together here. So thank you very much for your dedication to our community and for providing the knowledge that you provided today.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure, as always. Thank you,
All
Mike.
right. We'll see you all. Thank you.
All
Have a
right.
great day.
Thanks, everybody.